Details of our stories now, and we are starting from issues about the current xenophobic attacks in South Africa, where Foreign Affairs Minister in Ghana, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, says the criminal elements attacking Ghanaians and other African nationals in South Africa's latest xenophobic attacks are undermining the efforts of building a united and strong Africa. Addressing the media after a crunch meeting with the South African ambassador to Ghana, the minister underscored the role Ghana played in the struggle for freedom for South Africans, indicating that the current acts of perpetrating the attacks must avert their minds to history and Africa unity struggle.
To believe in Pan-Africanism, and we continue to believe that it is only when Africa unites that Africa's full potential will be realized, as our founder, the Sadiko Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said. So it is really regrettable that at this time.
So we'll bring you the specific voice and a clearer voice of what the Foreign Affairs Minister has been saying. In the meantime, some Ghanaian victims of the xenophobic attack in South Africa say they are safe and have expressed their sincere thanks to the country, or that is Ghana, for coming to their aid. One of them who spoke to us earlier said that the Ghanaian High Commission in South Africa had also been giving them some consular assistance. Let's listen to one of the victims who's been expressing their thoughts to us regarding the recent attacks in South Africa.
Ima came over today. We've had extensive discussions. I have also expressed the goodwill from His Excellency the President and also the Honorable Minister, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, to him that we are here to serve him. We are here to ensure that we protect the interests of the Ghanaian people. Our concern is to make sure that he's okay, and he's right here with us, believing that whatever we are doing diplomatically to solve the problem, we work together with both governments to ensure that it's done.
Ima uwasem kaka obeso kache Ghana for na. Sasem kaka mekanse nehoye. Yidi ne koso na ene ajana no moya mesana beti. Enko pando boni ni anto hoye na. Yes nene high commission wa hano pe ya. Ye ne nkuta ho di nti bi aboko.
Te pese kache we busi afoso of Ghana. And there's all my me opinion by ti
Ti amese wa batampa.
Wa ba.
Ri kwa kuma to ya.
Amen. 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 And to encourage the Ghanaian population that the situation is dire, we understand. Let's continue to be law-abiding. Let's continue to respect the rules and regulations and the rules of engagement as migrant citizens in this country. I think that whatever it is that we do, we've always been noted as Ghanaians to be law-abiding. We've always been noted as being people who don't foment trouble. So let's not go that route yet. Let's continue to engage with them, and I'm sure that it's just a matter of time. Everything will be all right, and whatever the minister, Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa, together with the good minister of Department of International Relations, the Honorable Lamola, are doing, will be able to resolve the issue, and then we move on. So thank you to all Ghanaians, wherever you find yourself. As your servant leader, I ask you to be law-abiding. I ask you to be patient. We've asked some of you, for example, in Mtata, not to open your shops today. We will be sending that advisory to most of the other provinces where we pick up any information. Our belief is that let's work together to ensure that we don't have casualties. Let's work together to ensure that whatever it is that we do will continue to foster that bilateral relationship that we have between South Africa.
And you heard one of the Ghanaian victims in that audio we just brought to you. We will be delving into the specific issues further, but first, the disturbing wave of xenophobic attacks and the tension in South Africa is once again drawing concerns across the continent. Since the end of the apartheid in 1994, a significant number of attacks have been recorded, leaving many with the question, why does this cycle persist? Safwa Boahen of our News Desk report has come through with this report.
To understand this movement, let's go back in 1994, the end of apartheid, a system that had defined South Africa through racial segregation and inequality. But even in those early years, cracks began to show. By the mid 1990s, migrants, many from other African countries, were already being targeted in townships accused of taking jobs, committing crime, and straining limited resources. In 1998, violence took a shocking turn when foreign nationals were attacked and thrown from a moving train following anti-immigrant protests. By the early 2000s, killings of foreign nationals had been recorded, signaling that xenophobia was not an isolated issue but a growing pattern. Then came 2008, a defining moment. A wave of xenophobic violence spread rapidly across the country, leaving more than 60 people dead and displacing over 100,000 others. What followed was not resolution but repetition. In 2015, violence resurfaced in Durban and other areas. In 2019, it spread once again across major cities including Johannesburg and Pretoria. Each time, the pattern remained the same: frustration, anger, and migrants becoming the easiest targets. Today, xenophobic violence in South Africa has not disappeared, it has evolved. Reports show that since 1994, there have been over 1,200 recorded incidents, nearly 700 deaths, and more than 120,000 people displaced. More recent years have seen the rise of organized anti-migrant movements, including campaigns and Operation Dudula, further intensifying tensions on the ground. At its core, this crisis is driven by a complex mix of high unemployment, deep inequality, and a persistent narrative that blames foreign nationals for economic hardship. But analysts warn that without strong leadership and consistent accountability, these cycles are likely to continue. For many Africans, South Africa was once seen as a land of promise, a symbol of what freedom could look like. Today, for some, that promise feels uncertain.
And that report was put together by Safwa Boahene. Now let's go to the phone lines and engage Dr. Paul Appiah, who is an international relations analyst. Doc, good evening. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, and thank you for having me this evening on your program.
What would your initial reactions be to this development, this recurring development? Many thought that, a few years ago when it happened and the whole continent condemned it, it should have ended there. The leadership of South Africa should have been able to find a solution to it. But it looks as though the issue is repeating itself and even getting worse. How do you analyze this?
Yeah, just to give a background as to why a lot of other African nationals find South Africa as a safe haven when it comes to migration. South Africa remains one of the most attractive destinations for African migrants that want to migrate within Africa because the country is relatively more developed in terms of infrastructure and also in terms of job availability. Cities like Johannesburg, Cape Town, Pretoria, Port Elizabeth, Durban can be compared to any developed city in Europe or in the Americas and even in the Asia. So people find South Africa very attractive. Other African nationals find South Africa very attractive because there are economic opportunities in terms of access to jobs, even entrepreneurship, and even markets. The market is relatively larger than most African countries. Income levels are also relatively higher. There is also political and social stability compared to other conflict-inflicted countries of Africa. In terms of education, we also have the presence of many reputable universities in South Africa, Wits University, University of Johannesburg, and others. So in terms of education, it also attracts a number of Africans for schooling purposes. So the attraction or the pull factors are there. Despite the attraction, the locals over the years have developed hatred for foreigners. And this stems from the apartheid era, where there was inequality, where we had social classes, and mostly the foreigners, who were mostly the whites, were better off than the local people. That has created or brewed a kind of hatred for foreigners in general. And so even seeing their fellow Africans coming and doing well in the informal sector has also heightened the hatred, and that has evolved into the xenophobic attacks, which heightened in 2008 as we have experienced over the years.
Right, and so it clearly tells us that there's something that is attracting the other African nationals to want to seek greener pastures in South Africa. Why hasn't a nation that has predominantly been so attractive, like you indicated, been able to put systems in place to check some of these kinds of attacks? Because, like we indicated in the beginning, or we all agreed to, this is not the first time people have actually lost their lives as a result of these attacks. Why is there not a solution, or at least a way of dealing with the insecurities of the locals?
Yeah, I think South Africa as a country over the years, after the locals took over, when apartheid rule ended, have not been able to develop systems to sustain the development that was started under the colonial leadership. For instance, there have been challenges in documentation, border control, and integration policies over the years. People are able to enter the country without getting papers or going through the formal immigration processes. So it is common to find a foreigner in South Africa who has worked in the country for 10 years and more without papers. And because of corruption, they find a way around the system. So, for instance, they are able to pay monies to certain people and get illegal papers, certain papers that are also accepted by the business community. So they are able to work. Meanwhile, their stay is not regular. So there's a high level of informality. Foreigners staying in the country. And that creates some kind of social tensions. And there's also the notion among the locals that these migrants, when they come in, they are willing to accept any wage level. So what the locals will not take, these foreigners are willing to take. And so they see the foreigners as competitors when it comes to the limited job opportunities that are available. And the fact that systems have not also been regularized has created the leeway for foreigners to troop in, and that has increased the resentment that the locals have for the foreigners. When it comes to social services are limited, and the foreigners think, the locals think that the foreigners are competing with them for the limited social amenities. That has also been one of the causes of the public attacks. Another issue has to do with informal economy tensions. In most countries, when it comes to petty trading, the opening of small shops, and informal economy in general, it is reserved for the locals. But it is a case that when you are walking the streets of Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, and other cities, when you see a barbering shop, most likely it is a Ghanaian owning it, it is a Nigerian owning it, a Zimbabwean owning it, or any other African national. And that has created a kind of resentment because when the locals see these foreigners doing well in these petty trading activities, they think they are taking over what should have been reserved for them by law. So they go after them. Sometimes they attack them. They take their money and run with it. That has also been one of the key issues. And then we also have the political rhetoric and scapegoating, where politicians blame these foreigners for the socio-economic challenges that South Africa is facing. So, for instance, when the average politician in South Africa is talking about unemployment, they are more likely to blame these migrants for the fact that the locals are not getting access to jobs because the migrants are taking jobs which otherwise should have been available for the locals. And that has heightened the resentment that the local people have for foreigners. And then also the perception of crimes and the fact that people always associate migrants unfairly to crimes, which reinforces the negative stereotypes and negative perceptions which the local people have for foreigners.
Right. Now let's broaden the conversation beyond just the country of South Africa. How do these xenophobic attacks impact the general effort of having a united Africa?
Yeah, it's so much precedent on efforts towards economic integration in Africa because Southern Africa has the Southern Africa Economic Community, SADC, which seeks to promote the free movement of people, goods, and services across South Africa. We also have AU, which is also moving towards general economic integration in Africa. And so if you look at SADC as an economic community, one of their key building blocks is free movement of people, goods, and services. So if South Africa is attacking people from Zambia, from Zimbabwe, and other countries, even neighboring countries, that so much does not augur well for the attempt towards economic integration of countries of South Africa and also for African Union in general. So I think African Union can take steps. But one, we should also, as much as possible, encourage other African nationals that migrate to South Africa to regularize their stay. You can't just move into somebody's country without papers, without regularizing your stay, and you want to stay and work. So as we impress upon South Africa to be more welcoming towards other African nationals, it is very important that other African countries are also impressing upon their citizens that move to South Africa and any other country to find a way of regularizing their stay, such that you are recognized, immigration authorities know you are in there, even your country also know that you are staying in South Africa. So that if something happens to you, at least diplomatic attention can be extended to you. So I think it's two-way affair. African Union, other African governments can impress upon South Africa to be more welcoming to other African citizens. But just as we do so, it is also important that other African nationals that intend to migrate and those that are even already there take steps to make sure that they regularize their stay. Because there are other people in South Africa who have regular papers who are staying there without any trouble. And sometimes even the fact that because of the notion that other Africans or most Africans in South Africa are not staying legally, there's an xenophobic attacks even extend to even professors teaching in universities who have regular stay, who have gone through the process, all because there is that perception out there that any other African national in South Africa is not having the right papers to stay.
Two final questions, then you take leave of us. It's actually quite troubling, the latter part of your submission, which is that even those who are in the system and regularized their stay have the right documentation, also are subjected to some of these attacks. You alluded to the role the government can play and what the African Union or the bigger mother body of the continent can play. How can that be done? And is there a gap between what the government says and how the citizens react or understand what the government is saying?
Yeah, I think there should be diplomatic engagement between the foreign missions of the other African countries. Recently, there was an immigration policy that for you to, so Ghana, for instance, we have free entry into South Africa without a visa for a stay up to 90 days. But when you are going, you make a deposit of 100 Ghana cedis with the airline you are traveling with. So when you come back, you come for that money. I think that money probably is too little, too small. People can easily forgo that money. So if there is a way to increase that deficit that people pay, I think that so much can go a long way to deter people that want to overstay their visas. That is one way to go about this. And then also, I think for the authorities in South Africa, they should also strengthen their border checking processes and their immigration processes to make sure that people who have intentions to overstay their visas are not coming in. So, for instance, when you look at the neighboring countries, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, and all the other neighboring countries, people are even able to cross the border because security systems at the border are that porous, are not that stringent. So, first, to start with, they should tighten security at the border post to make sure that migrants are not crossing in without checks. That adds so much to the problem. Then for other migrants that enter by air, they should also be checked. So the deficit, as I spoke about, can be increased to make sure that people that want to stay are detained. Because if you pay, let's say, $500 as a deposit, which you are supposed to come back to your country and redeem. That may so much compel you to come back relative to paying $100, which you can easily decide to forgo. And then if Africa is thinking of moving towards a situation where we have complete integration, because I've been in Europe, I've traveled from Germany to Netherlands, from Austria to Germany, from Italy to Austria. When you get to the border, you don't see that you are even crossing the border. All that you see is maybe welcome to Germany. We do not even have immigration officers at the border post. So if Africa really wants to move towards that point where we have total economic integration, I think we should also break the border barriers. In this day and age, even with ECOWAS having been with us for several years, to cross the border from Ghana to Togo is a problem. Sometimes traders can spend up to 1 hour, 2 hours just trying to cross the border from Aflao to Lomé. Crossing the border from Benin to Nigeria, the Seme border. I've traveled by road to Nigeria quite a number of times, and it's a headache. And so if we cannot facilitate this simple movement of people, then how can we be talking about economic integration in Africa? So I think it's about time the African Union and the regional economic blocs take practical steps towards taking away the barriers to movement of people. Because for us to have economic integration, we need to have people moving. It is people that will move the goods and services across the borders of Africa. We have a market of about 1.4 billion people, but we are not talking so much with each other as African countries. And if you look at our trade routes, a lot of times we are shipping out of Africa raw materials and we are importing high-value manufactured products. And that does not help. Intra-African trade in this day and age is still just about 13%. Why can't we take steps to break the barrier so that Ghana is trading with Nigeria, Ghana is trading with Togo, South Africa is trading with Zimbabwe, South Africa is trading with Ghana, and we are importing and exporting among ourselves? That will so much insulate us from shocks on the international market. Now, with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the conflict in the Middle East, it has so much affected the price of fuel in Africa. Meanwhile, the Dangote refinery in Nigeria has the capacity to refine fuel, petrol, gas, and diesel for all African countries. If we are supplying the Dangote refinery with our crude within Africa, Ghana is supplying, Angola is supplying its crude to Dangote refinery, and we are buying from Dangote refined petroleum products. We are buying from ourselves. We have refineries across Africa. Ghana has the Tamale refinery. Why can't we revive it? Fact that we are refining the fuel that we need to insulate ourselves from international economic shocks.
In conclusion, and
leaders have a lot to do in terms of addressing some of these challenges that we have.
Be brief for me on this last bit. The Foreign Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa has met with the South African ambassador to Ghana and more or less got him to give an assurance that the government of South Africa was going to do something about these attacks. He even said that the South African president will address the nation later today. We are all waiting to see what exactly he will say regarding this. But what do you make of this meeting, and what kind of outcome are you expecting would be the way forward?
Yes, the diplomatic engagements are very essential in the meantime to put a stop to the attacks, because lives are involved. And we are brothers, African brothers. And so if we are doing this to ourselves, what do we expect the Chinese to do to an African on the streets of China? What do we expect South Americans to do to an African on the streets of South America? And so we should show that brotherly love to the international community. Very important. But as we impress upon South Africa to put in place security measures to guarantee the safety of our citizens, I think as a country, we should also embark on a national education to potential migrants, to impress upon them not to migrate to any country through illegal means. If you want to travel to any country, make sure you are following the right procedure, such that when you get there, you are welcome. When you see the police, you are not panicking. You are not living in an underground economy. We should, as much as possible, try to regularize our stay. And so as we engage South Africa to try and address the issue, I think it's important that we are also advising our citizens to do the right thing. And for our citizens that are already in South Africa, they should take steps to go through the right processes to be recognized as legal migrants that can also access other opportunities available in South Africa to the locals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Appiah, for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you very much. I am a lecturer at Academic City University. You didn't mention that, so just to
add that.
Put that across.
Okay. Thank you so much, and we are grateful you made time to speak to us.
Thank you for having me this evening on your program.
Right. You heard Dr. Paul Appiah, an international relations analyst and also a lecturer at the Academic City University here. He has been also telling us about what the way forward could be, considering the adverse impact of this particular xenophobic attack in South Africa on other African nationals. This is not the first, second, third, or fourth time. This seems to be a recurring danger which is undermining the effort of economic growth and unity for the continent. Now, I indicated that the Foreign Affairs Minister has been speaking on this. Let's listen to him briefly. Then we'll shift our attention to some other big stories making rounds in Ghana.
If I do not comment on the troubling circumstances underway in South Africa, here we are banding together as West Africans, showing that we can work together, we can cooperate, and we can produce results together. That is the true spirit of Pan-Africanism. That is the true spirit of cooperation, which our founding fathers always worked tirelessly to achieve. Earlier today, I held a meeting with the Charge of the South African High Commission in Accra. Yesterday, I had a telephone conversation with my counterpart, the Foreign Minister of South Africa. And in all of those engagements, Ghana has strongly condemned the xenophobic attacks our nationals have come under. I acknowledge that our counterparts in South Africa have expressed regret, have assured us that there will be investigations and that they will take steps to nip this really condemnable and regrettable xenophobic attack in the bud. I also take note of President Cyril Ramaphosa's pledge to address the country later today to urge that South Africans respect the rights and the dignity of all persons who are living with them as Africans, as human beings. These developments are most depressing because as Africans, we all know the role we played in assisting South Africa to defeat the apartheid regime. Right here in these hallowed grounds, the precincts we find ourselves, this used to be the International Students Hostel. We hosted a lot of freedom fighters from South Africa and many parts of Africa. Ghanaian taxpayers took care of the scholarships they were provided, the meals they were provided. We issued passports, Ghanaian passports, when they were declared stateless and when they could not travel freely. We issued Ghanaian passports to them right here in these premises. We extended support, financial support, to the ANC. All of us as African leaders must condemn that.
So you heard excerpts of what the Foreign Affairs Minister said regarding his meeting with the South African ambassador to Ghana. Some messages have been coming in on our Facebook stream. Aaron Babako says, good evening. We call upon the South African authorities to halt these unilateral actions and engage in immediate diplomatic dialogue with Ghana to ensure the dignity and safety of all migrants. Furthermore, we urge the Ghanaian government to intervene decisively, protecting its citizens abroad while addressing the underlying issues that drive such migration. It is time for both nations to prioritize cooperation over confrontation to sanitize our regional relations. Your comments are also very welcome. Do send them to us on our social media pages. Facebook is where this bulletin is streaming. We are also on YouTube and on Twitter. Away from that, to Parliament now, and sponsors of the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill, widely referred to as the Anti-LGBTQ Bill, are pushing for its swift passage, insisting that the proposed legislation meets all necessary legal and financial requirements. At the start of public consultations aimed at gathering stakeholder input, the sponsors emphasized that Ghana should take inspiration from other African countries that have enacted similar laws. Shaibu Mahama is the chairman of Parliament's Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee.
This bill was introduced some time back, but with a fraction of time, many other things would have happened. Many events would have changed stuff. And so for us, it's a blessing in disguise. So if there were some clauses that were missed out in considering at the last sitting of Parliament before the Parliament lapsed, we have the opportunity of incorporating, deleting, amending, or reshaping the nature of the bill. We take cognizance of the rights of individuals who may be affected by this, and we're making the provisions in such a way that no individual, no Ghanaian's rights are going to be infringed upon. We also take note of existing legislation that has already taken care of some of the clauses that we'll be looking at here. And so this is going to be comprehensive. It's back on the back burner again, and today we start with that.
You heard Shaibu Mahama, who is chairman of Parliament's Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee. Now, a proponent of the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill, John Ntim Fodjo, argued that the bill can be expedited without any compromises.
I do not think that this bill should be subjected to fresh national dialogue. In fact, all the CSOs and all the concerns, most of them have gone through, are the same concerns that came up in the first cycle of this bill. The same, all the CSOs who have come today are the same CSOs and stakeholders who participated. And so there is no reinventing the wheel. There is really nothing broken in this bill to be fixed, and for which it should be expedited. And in expediting, we are not also indicating that certain shortcuts should be entertained. We can expedite this bill in a day without compromising any part of our procedures, so long as our standing orders are concerned and so long as the Constitution of Ghana are concerned. And therefore, we would appeal to the leadership that in your magnanimity and in line with the overwhelming concerns of the public who are eagerly waiting for the same bill to be passed.
John Ntim Fodjo is an MPP member of Parliament and also one of the lead proponents of the anti-LGBTQ bill. Let's listen to Sam George, who is also one of the leading members when it comes to this bill that was sent to Parliament via a private member's bill. And then now we are told that government wants to actually lead the bill and relay it in Parliament, for which reason today's dialogue session has taken place. Let's listen to what Sam George also said at the meeting.
Uganda has replicated our bill, gone ahead to pass it. Senegal has done the same, passed it, and even reviewed their bill to increase the sanctions. And let us be clear, it has not brought any economic sanctions on any of those countries. And so it is important that I believe that we have done this, but we will respect the processes. The processes for the passage of a private member's bill must be respected to the letter. through every single phase. So even though we want expediency, I will urge that we do what the letter of the law says is the process. Let me reiterate the fact that as for the clauses, we have gone through them, we've masticated them, we will go through them expeditiously, and there is nothing new. I have seen a few suggestions that have come. We can look at the merits or demerits, but the body of the law, Mr. Chairman, remains the same. The calls from very respectable groups like the Catholic Bishops' Conference are very well placed because of how sensitive and important this is. From the office of the Chief Imam, very important calls have been made. We've been told by the Chief Imam spokesperson that the Chief Imam's pleasure is to see this bill passed before he is called to his maker. I believe that Parliament has a responsibility to grant the Chief Imam his wish and grant the Catholic bishops their wish by making sure we do what we have to do expeditiously and placing this before President Mahama. And then we can collectively demand that President Mahama signs the bill. I have all the assurances that he will do the necessary when we place the bill before him.
And you heard the voice of Sam Nati, Judge Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram and also a lead proponent for the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill. Your thoughts are also very welcome on this very controversial subject. Well, as it stands, it looks as though majority of Ghanaians are in support of the passage of the bill. And so today's public dialogue session was more or less to peruse and go over what has already been done in the past. It was passed by Parliament, but then under the previous administration, when Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was president, the bill was forwarded to him, but then he came up with reasons why he thought that it was not appropriate to sign it, so he did not sign it into law, for which reason it elapsed when the last Parliament ended, and it has to be relayed, which government intends to lead themselves. So we'll see what the coming days hold for us as we all await to see how else, what other inputs would be made to the anti-LGBTQ bill, or what we call the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill. We're staying in Parliament, but this time around, you know that there's a committee that's known as the Public Accounts Committee. Now, they are in the Ashanti region, and they've expressed strong dissatisfaction over the misuse of funds meant for feeding students in some senior high schools. The committee commenced its sitting in the Ashanti region for the second zonal public hearing to examine the 2024 Auditor General's report on public schools and district assemblies. On day 4 of the hearing, the committee raised concerns about the diversion of money allocated for perishable food items to support administrative and operational expenses. Ibrahim Abubakar, Ashanti Regional Correspondent, followed the session and will be joining us shortly to give us an understanding of how things have gone in the last 4 days since the committee started sitting in the Ashanti region. Again, it comes on the back of earlier meetings in Accra where very stark revelations were made as regards how public servants misappropriated or misapplied funds that had been allocated for specific contracts and jobs. Before the committee, it was difficult for a number of the people who appeared before them to justify some financial use or the use of some of the monies that had been allocated and whether the monies actually produced value because of the outcomes that were laid before the committee. Some cases showed that the committee leadership expressed quite a shock as regards how much had been allocated, how much was expended, and the final outlook or outcome of what the project was. And on the back of that, there were several cautions. Almost every day there was the caution about how public funds are misused or misrepresented. And we are very confident that following the meeting that has now moved to the Ashanti region, by the time the meetings are done, a full report from the committee would come up to give an idea on how public funds should be used to ensure that the country benefits and we get good value for money. Try and work the lines to speak to Ibrahim Abubakar, but in the meantime, let's listen to some of the key breaches that were made public when people appeared before the committee in the hearing earlier today.
So, maintenance costs and others delayed in coming.
Yes, please.
Then you use the monies that you are supposed to use to purchase foodstuffs for the children.
Yes, please, Honorable.
For running a maintenance cost. And then you go out there and say, government hasn't brought enough money, we cannot feed the students, we cannot do this, we cannot do that.
Honorable, what happened was that as cost center manager,
yes,
the school needed to be run. And those expenditure that I just mentioned were equally important for us to undertake.
Were equally important.
Yes, Honorable.
But then, what does the law say about using funds meant for specific purposes differently, other than the purpose for which it was used for? What does the law say?
Honorable, I can't quote the law verbatim, but I know it is wrong. That shouldn't have been done.
You are not even telling us how you are going to reimburse the monies, the accounts of the monies you took from. You are not the only school. In all, there are about 18, and it's just 5 of you who were cited for this. Monies meant to feed students are not to be used to run the operations of the school.
And you heard excerpts of today's deliberations when the Public Accounts Committee met with a number of public servants who appeared before them to justify how public funds were expended, which had been allocated to these various institutions. Largely, they were looking at how school feeding program and the monies that had been allocated were used, whether they were used appropriately to buy the right items to feed the students, or whether or not the students actually suffered, although these allocations had been made available. Our website, 3news.com, has many more of the reactions there as well, and you can also be a part of it. Now, the Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, has been speaking on a number of key national issues. We'll try and bring that to you in a moment. Before that, though, let's bring this in quickly. This is 3FM 92.7. You're listening to Hot Edition. Thank you for staying with 3FM. Let's do some more stories this evening. The Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, has urged the Controller and Accountant General's Department to lead digital transformations that will drive real-time financial reporting and promote transparency and accountability in public expenditure. She noted that such reforms are essential for delivering tangible results, including increased investment in infrastructure and broader socio-economic development, addressing the department's annual conference in Koforidua. The conference is aimed at exploring technologies that can improve data quality, validation, and payroll integrity, while strengthening transparency in payroll reporting, clearance processes, and overall accountability in financial workflows. She emphasized the need for strict commitment controls to prevent financial irregularities, stressing the importance of eliminating ghost names on government payrolls, noting that such measures are critical to broader national transformation agenda.
lead the digital transformation of government accounting systems, ensure strict commitment control and prevent arrears, strengthen payroll integrity, and eliminate ghost names, drive real-time financial reporting, and support transparent, accountable public expenditure systems. Such reforms deliver results like the investment in infrastructure under the Big Push, expanded education, health and social protection, and, of course, job creation. This is the essence of judicious fiscal governance. It turns policy into impact and resources into development outcomes.
Vice President Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman will now then take us into the world of business. Bismarck Owusu is standing by to let us know what's happening. This is 3FM 92.7.
Hello, good evening and welcome to the business segment. Coming up tonight, National Petroleum Authority seeks overhaul of 20-year-old law to modernize Ghana's fuel pricing. I am Bismarck Owusu. Details of this story and others, please stay. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. Ghana's downstream petroleum sector is on the average or verge of a major legislative reset. The National Petroleum Authority, NPA, has proposed a new bill to Parliament that will repeal and replace the NPA Act of 2025 or 2005 Act 9691, aiming to streamline fuel pricing and modernize infrastructure funding. Addressing Parliament's Energy Committee, NPA Chief Executive Edudzi Tamaklo argued that while the existing law has served the country for 2 decades, it has become inadequate for the evolving complexities of the modern market. At the heart of the proposed reforms is a plan to simplify the often criticized fuel price build-up. The bill seeks to merge the Unified Petroleum Pricing Fund and the primary distribution margin into a single entity, the Distribution Fund. Moving on, President of the Association of Ghana Industries, AGI, Dr. Kofi Nsiapoku, has called for a clear and transparent rule on access to credit in Ghana. Speaking at a sensitization workshop on borrowing and lending organized in collaboration with the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Nsiapoku said credit must be cost-effective and inclusive to truly support businesses. Clearer guidelines, he argued, would help level the playing field and ensure more entrepreneurs can access affordable financing.
Microeconomic stability has a positive bearing on lending rates. Your presence therefore underscores the importance of collaboration between industry, regulators, and financial institutions in strengthening Ghana's credit environment. The Borrowers and Lenders Act 2020 represents a major step forward in promoting responsible lending, protecting borrowers' rights, and enhancing transparency and efficiency within our credit system. For businesses, especially small and medium enterprises, access to finance remains a critical pillar for growth, expansion, and sustainability. However, access must be supported by clear rules, mutual accountability, and a shared understanding of rights and obligations.
And that was President of the Association of Ghana Industries, AGI, Dr. Kofi Nsiapoku, bringing us to the end of the business segment on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck Owusu. For more business stories, please check out our website, 3news.com. Andrew Sefa is here for sports. Please stay.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the sports segment here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Andrew Sifa Bamfo. Let's bring you updates from the Black Stars camp because head coach of the team, that is Carlos Queiroz, met the media for the first time at the Alisa Hotel earlier today. Now, the veteran tactician outlined his tactics and vision for the team ahead of the 2026 World Cup. My colleague Ore Kwampofo, who was at the Alisa Hotel, some support transpired in the following report.
A big day in the history of Ghana football as experienced Portuguese coach Carlos Queiroz has been confirmed as the new head coach of the Black Stars. A 4-month contract as he was unveiled at Alisa Hotel earlier and endeared to the Ghanaian crowd. A reminder that Queiroz arrived in Ghana on Wednesday evening where he had the opportunity to meet the sports ministry on Thursday morning, where he said he felt African and was privileged to take this job. In the press conference, his first words were that this would be his biggest challenge yet, which led to a lot of eyebrows being raised, considering the 73-year-old has coached teams like Manchester United, Real Madrid, and Portugal. The biggest concern was what the configuration of the technical team for Queiroz would be. However, there was clarification that the Portuguese would be bringing 5 technical team members, as the likes of Fatau Dauda, John Paintel, and Desmond Ofei would be keeping their jobs.
Yes, Queiroz is the head coach. Yeah. He's coming in with, for now, 5 of his backroom staff. 5 people have been confirmed. Okay. I know that the previous team, there were issues about John Paintel. I specifically mentioned John Paintel and Fatau Dauda because in the last few days, there have been rumors, or there were rumors that they have been relieved of their duties. Okay. So it was important to clear the air regarding the future of those 2 gentlemen. They are still part of the team.
The most used word during Queiroz's press conference was win, and he highlighted the need for the team to shift its mental framework and believe that they need to fight and get the victory in every match at the World Cup. Now, the big question was, if Queiroz hasn't seen the team play yet, how is he going to name his provisional squad? Now, he went on to list 5 key factors that he will be looking at when it comes to naming his squad for the World Cup. Number 1 is determination. Number 2, performance, experience, attitude, and then the final point was knowledge. Now, his component of players was divided into 2, the local-based players and then the foreign-based players. He says that the FA have already set aside a team that has data and is ensuring that they do provide data on players to make the work easier. When it comes to the local side, Queiroz would be visiting the Black Galaxies team, which are currently camping, and would have the chance to engage with the players and see them train to be able to determine which local players deserve to go to the World Cup. And then after that, attention would be focused on the European players.
First of all, nobody owns the national team shirt. That's a point that must be clear. Nobody has for himself, either for name or reputation, to own the shirt. But the players, they dream to represent the country. And it is our job to give them a fair and right opportunity. That's why in this short period of time, my concern with the Federation was to organize the local players, because I didn't want to go for the final selection without having the opportunity to see them, to be with them, and analyze them. So, at the end, my job it is to be sure that the ones that they dress the shirt are the ones that they really deserve to be there.
In just over 40 days' time, Queiroz would be making his 5th appearance at the World Cup, and Ghana, coincidentally, will also be making its 5th appearance at the World Cup. All eyes will be on the former Real Madrid coach and how he's able to assemble his team ahead of the Mundial in North America this year. Ore Kwampofo reporting from Alisa Hotel for 3 Sports.
So that was a comprehensive report put together by my colleague Ore Kwampofo for bringing an end to Hot Edition here on 3FM 92.7. Do join us same time tomorrow for more updates in the world of business, news and sports. My name is Andrew Sifa Bamfo.